Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Now today, we're diving into some pretty heavy, fascinating stuff from a source called The Last Human, our silent surrender to the machine. And right off the bat, it hits us with this deeply unsettling paradox. Think about it. Humanity's most dangerous creation, it actually isn't a bomb. It's not some engineered virus. No, it is simply a tool. Let's get right into how we're quietly, almost willingly, surrendering to it. So the source poses this exact question, and it's a real paradigm shift. Seriously, it brilliantly reframes how we even think about a threat. Normally when we think of danger, our minds immediately go to destruction, right? But the author suggests a totally different kind of peril. This tool we've built, it's so effortless, so incredibly fast, and honestly, so thoroughly brilliant at what it does that we've kind of just forgotten how to live without it. The narrative here argues that we aren't being conquered by some overwhelming force. Nope. We are willingly, even happily giving away our own minds, literally one single click at a time. Well, how did this whole thing start? The seduction, as it turns out, was incredibly innocent. We looked at AI and we just saw a helper. We asked it to draft a few routine emails, no big deal. But then, that expanded to full reports, and eventually, entire books. We handed over the really complex task of navigating our sprawling cities. We allowed it to diagnose our bodies, and, increasingly, we're letting it teach our children. The source points out something absolutely crucial. The reason this surrender is so quiet, so unnoticed, is because the tool is magnificent. It gets the job done fast, it's crazy accurate, and it literally never gets tired. So the natural human response is, honestly, why would we ever go back to doing it the hard way?
Just consider the massive shift happening in our classrooms. Back in 2010, you've got students totally engaged in the physical, cognitive friction of writing by hand. It takes effort. But jump to 2025, and you see a completely different picture. A room full of kids staring at screens, totally dependent on tablets, with an AI doing all the heavy lifting of explaining the world to them. The source material asks a really pointed, uncomfortable question here. What actually happens to a muscle that you simply stop using?
Well, the answer is pretty brutal. That muscle, it doesn't wait around. It doesn't rest. It just disappears. The narrative warns us that we aren't just dropping bad habits here. We are losing the absolute most important human muscles we possess, our fundamental ability to think deeply, to problem solve our way through really messy, complex scenarios, to create something from absolute scratch, and to just endure intellectual struggle. All these capabilities, they're actively vanishing, simply because we're outsourcing them. And the source backs this up with some very real, tangible science. So this isn't just some philosophical late-night debate, it is deeply physiological. Look at this 2024 study focusing on the hippocampus. That's the region of our brain responsible for spatial memory. The study found that in people who regularly use GPS navigation, this specific part of their brain had measurably degraded. The argument here is incredibly stark. By outsourcing our sense of direction to an app on our phones, we aren't upgrading our minds with new technology. We are literally rewiring and in many ways, hollowing out our own brains.
And this kind of erosion, it bleeds directly into our everyday professional lives. We are witnessing a total collapse of foundational skills. Young professionals are increasingly finding themselves completely unable to perform tasks that used to be considered basic, baseline stuff. Writing a formal letter without firing up a generative AI assistant, calculating basic personal finances without relying on a specialized app, even just holding a difficult, nuanced conversation without turning to a script or Googling what to say. So here's the crucial, frankly terrifying point the source makes. It isn't just that these skills are gone, it's that the people who've lost them don't even realize they're gone, because they never actually felt the skills leave in the first place.
But it goes so much further than just basic office tasks. We're talking about the total erosion of generational craft. Just imagine the knowledge passed down from master to apprentice, cultivated over decades, centuries even, whether that's a master carpenter, a seasoned chef, or an expert welder. The text really highlights the tragedy of a veteran craftsman watching a machine perform in mere seconds what took them 20 years of sweat, tears, and failure to finally master. It's centuries of accumulated human knowledge replaced overnight by an algorithm, and crucially, this is the kicker, an algorithm that was trained on the collective hard work of humanity, yet is owned by almost no one. Now, let's just pause here and let the gravity of this data breathe for a second. 85 million. This is the number that the source notes is keeping top economists awake at night. According to a massive projection by the World Economic Forum, 85 million is the number of jobs that will be displaced by automation and AI by the year 2030. The author really stresses that we cannot just view this as some dry, abstract economic statistic. At 85 million displaced livelihoods, we aren't talking about a market shift. We are looking at a full-blown civilization-level event. Because this wave of automation spans a truly staggering breadth of industries. We aren't just talking about robots on the assembly line anymore. We're looking at manufacturing, sure, but also customer service, accounting, legal research, medical imaging, content creation, coding. The source ruthlessly lists these off one by one to emphasize just how fast automation is sweeping across the entire spectrum of human endeavor. White collar, blue collar, it doesn't matter. And yeah, while new jobs might pop up, they're going to require skills that the displaced workers simply were never ever trained for. The core argument here is that the technology is moving way, way faster than human adaptation naturally allows.
And it's so important to remember, the people left behind in this massive transition, they aren't unintelligent, they aren't lazy. They are simply being made obsolete in a world that moved on without bothering to wait for them. And why this should absolutely matter to every single one of us is what happens next. The source draws a really direct line to human psychology here. When people lose their work, they don't just lose a paycheck, they lose their identity, they lose their sense of purpose, their dignity. And when you strip identity and dignity from millions of people all at once, societies do not stay stable. They fracture.
So shifting gears from the micro, personal level up to the macro, global scale, the source brings up a really uncomfortable reality about who actually wins in all of this. The countries and the massive entities best positioned to benefit from this AI revolution, they're the ones that already possess these three huge assets: existing wealth, robust infrastructure, and endless streams of data. So instead of a great equalizer, the power just consolidates at the very top.
To really grasp the global impact here, you have to consider the traditional economic ladder. For 2 whole centuries, this has been the proven, reliable path to lift nations out of crushing poverty. Step 1, start with agriculture. Then you move up to Step 2, manufacturing. And finally, you climb to Step 3, service-based economies. This exact ladder lifted literally billions of people into a better quality of life. But the source makes a chilling, undeniable claim. AI is effectively kicking this exact ladder completely away. For developing nations, places whose economies heavily depend on raw human labor to climb that ladder, the new reality is incredibly bleak. AI isn't an opportunity for them. It is a brick wall. Because if they cannot compete with these hyper-efficient, fully automated systems owned by wealthy nations, they won't just stagnate. The narrative warns that they are going to slide entirely backward, into mass unemployment and civil unrest. They will become completely dependent on the tiny handful of mega tech companies across the globe that actually own the AI infrastructure. Which brings us to this really profound, gut-wrenching reckoning presented by the source. We are currently raising the very first generation of human beings who may never actually need to struggle to learn. Like, they might never have to sit with that frustrating confusion or wrestle with a really tough problem until they finally crack it and find their own answer. But the author reminds us that struggle, as brutal and annoying as it can be in the moment, is exactly how humans actually grow. Removing the human struggle doesn't magically create some superhuman species. It creates a totally dependent one. It leaves us with this haunting question: will there be enough of us left to even remember how to be human? And that leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative thought from the source text to chew on. Look, AI is not evil. The machine doesn't hate you, it doesn't have feelings. But the road to collapse, as the author brilliantly notes, doesn't actually require a villain. It only requires comfort, convenience, and our own quiet, everyday willingness to let something else do the hard work for us. The most dangerous surrender in history required no army, just an app. Wow, it's a truly chilling reality to sit with, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those hard questions, keep challenging the tools you use every single day, and I will see you next time.